Hey, thanks for joining us here on Wave Now's podcast. We should talk about it. I'm Myra Ansari with Dr. Stephen Taylor from UofL Health Peace Hospital. So today we're talking about something pretty timely, is the election impacting your mental health. A new study from Forbes Health said that 61% say that the presidential election is having an impact on their mental health, and it's negative. So I figured the best person to talk about this is Dr. Taylor. So this is a big election. Of course, you can't get away from it if you're watching the news, if you get on social media, maybe you're talking about it around the dinner table at home, even at work. And I just want to reiterate to folks that this is not about who you're voting for. I want people to know that. You don't have to go off and say what you like or dislike right now, but is this impacting your mental health? Are you stressed out about it? And I think a lot of people are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, politics in general is kind of like religion. Now, there are two topics that we just internalize and personalize so much that whenever we have a conversation about it, we're really talking about ourselves. We're not talking about issues or any particular political views any more than when we talk about religion. We're just talking about religion as a general sense. We really personalize it and internalize it a lot. And I think that's part of why it makes it very difficult.
How do we deal with this? Because oftentimes, if you find out someone's maybe thoughts, support doesn't align with yours, it may make you feel a certain way about that person or maybe what they think. How do we process that?
Yeah, it's so variable. If it's somebody that's close to you or somebody that you have a close relationship with, it might be possible to sort of set the stage for the conversation as a way of protecting each other's selves emotionally, sometimes like doing couples therapy in a way. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about what we feel, how we feel. We're not going to talk about each other or use words or terms or concepts that demean the other. This is about just sort of saying, this is what I feel, or this is what I know, this is what I think, as opposed to, why do you think this? Who are you to be, having a different view than me?
Mm-hmm. Are there some places where we shouldn't be talking about this? Keep it off the subject. Don't bring it up.
I mean, I don't know. We are getting close to Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving is historically that thing where, we don't talk about religion and politics when we get together as families, which as a psychoanalyst, I've always found that kind of amusing because sex and money are way harder to talk about than religion and politics. So whenever my family says, we're not going to talk about those two things, and I'll say, oh, well, we could talk about the other two things then. And we usually end up talking about religion and politics.
So I went out around the town and just asked people, is the presidential election giving you anxiety? And a lot of the folks that I talked to said yes, that they were worried about. The one comment people said, I'm worried about the future. Mm-hmm. So that can have a big mental toll on people. Like there's uncertainty.
Right. Well, it's playing on emotion. In general, politicians play on people's feelings anyway. They know that we vote with our feelings, not with our heads. They know that we vote emotionally and not intellectually. So that's something that gets played on anyway. And this is certainly a cycle where we've seen a lot more of that than we ordinarily do. And I think that's a big factor in it, hearing people say things that get your emotions wound up. That's going to be a lot more difficult to cope with than just, we have this set of ideas compared to this other set of ideas. That's a very different kind of conversation. But we tend to sort of fight these things out emotionally anyway. And this is a very emotional packed scenario we're living through.
Mm-hmm. Do the negative ads kind of pile on top of it?
Oh, for sure. Because they're playing on fears. We react to fear is one of our most powerful responses. So if they can come up with something that plays on your fear, you're much more likely to engage than if they're just trying to be reasonable and rational. If Mr. Rogers did all the commercials for politics, we wouldn't care one way or the other. Right?
Yeah.
Because he wouldn't be going after our emotional center. He would just be trying to be reasonable and talk about ideas and so on. And that's not the way the arena plays out.
No. So in this article from Forbes Health, they had said that when asked which emotions participants had experienced in relation to recent presidential election, anxiety was the most common, as we mentioned, felt the most common emotion felt across generations, with 49% of Gen Z feeling anxious about the election compared to 45% of millennials. and Gen X and 44% of baby boomers. So you see a difference in the emotion compared to age range. And this article even goes into how different men and women feel about the presidential election. And it makes sense when you talk about certain topics, which we don't want to get into, but how certain rights could impact men and how they could impact women.
For sure. Well, feeling powerless, anxiety and fear and anger are going to be some of the emotions that get triggered most when people feel like they have no power. They feel like they're being either stripped of power or that they are powerless. And that can be a perceptive thing. They can be something they just think is true. It can be something that actually, in fact, is true. But those things will be triggers for fear, for anxiety, for anger.
And in this study, they said that women had a higher percentage of respondents experiencing anxiety, stress, and fear. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Tell me why.
Well, power. Who's got control over you and me? And I think that's also one of the things that does make conspiracy theories so popular, is because it gives the person who follows them a sense of power. And the more a group feels they don't have power, the more we see a preponderance of promoting conspiracy theories. They become much more popular when a group feels like they're losing power or they're being stripped of power.
So are these feelings legitimate if that makes sense?
Well, they're legitimate in the sense that they're being triggered by something, and this is what people are really feeling. And I think, as a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst, my bottom line is always going to be to try to make space for people to talk about and feel their feelings and to be able to be heard for feeling the way they do. That's important. I think one of the reasons why we do get into so many arguments and fights when we're dealing with something as emotional as religion or politics is because we feel like we're not going to be heard. We have a feeling, we're going to try to express it, and the other person's not going to hear us. They're not going to say that our feeling is legitimate. They'll come up with some reason to say, well, you're just stupid or whatever, whatever the argument becomes. And so I think having space to be heard and to be understood and to be heard feeling what we feel is important.
Okay, so a lot of times we voice our thinking through voting, of course.
For sure.
I see comments on social media. People share articles. Is that one way to do it, or what's the healthy thing to do? Because sometimes things get really nasty, and it's just like, oh.
Well, voting matters, and that's one of the ways that we sort of express our sense of being valued. It matters what we do, and it's very complicated. There's a lot of arguments all around the issues of voting and not voting, and the way our political system is put together and how it works. But it does matter. What we do matters. And if we feel like voting matters, then we're going to have a much more sense of power than if we feel like it doesn't make any difference. Why even bother? People I know who don't vote because they just feel like their opinion makes no difference. It doesn't matter. They've devalued themselves. And even if there's going to be a group that marginalizes any individual or any group of individuals, it's important for them to recognize that you do have value and you do have power, and it's important for you to find that space.
That's really interesting what you said, that people who choose not to vote, that you're devaluing yourself.
Yeah.
I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah. I mean, there's already a group out there looking for a reason to devalue some of us anyway. Why give them ammunition? So I do think it does exercise our freedom, our power. We should do it.
Okay, so election day, if things don't go the way that you had hoped for them to go, and you're feeling these emotions, you're feeling anger, you're feeling fear, what do you do?
Well, it's important to have somebody to talk to. That matters. It does matter to have somebody to listen to you. Your feelings matter. And, I can remember election cycles time and time again where being on the losing side of an election, having the other group say, just get over it. And I'm thinking, well, it's not that easy. Feelings are complicated, and we need space to talk about them and to be heard.
And what do you do when the person that you wanted to win doesn't win, and the person across from you, their person win? They're like, yes, now, we're going to take over. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And they're excited. And you're just like, I just want to stick it to them really hard. What do you do? What do you do with that feeling?
Well, you have to feel that feeling that is yours to feel. And if the person that's on the other side can't give you space to do that, find another group.
Is it wrong to be overly excited? And I don't want to, hopefully not obnoxious, but I'm sure that there'll be that emotion too.
Well, for sure. I think, for me to be excited about my side winning, that's fine. But to keep in my mind that I'm not the only one that feels that way. And to keep in mind that maybe 50% of the people I know have a different feeling about it, and to be sensitive to that. That's important, to maintain that. I can be obnoxious and victorious and be a kind of person nobody wants to be around because my side wins. But as terms of just being a decent, caring human, it's important to make space for people who are not happy and are hurt, and to be able to hear them and to make room for that. If we all were that way, it would be a much different place that we're living in.
Absolutely, for sure. All right. So this article says a lot of the ways that Americans cope with negative emotions, they avoid the news, which is understandable. You need a break from it. Talking with friends and family, that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Avoiding social media, totally get it.
Yeah.
Exercise more. That's interesting.
There you go.
That's positive. Avoiding family, friends with differing views. Okay. And emotional eating, guilty.
Well, okay.
Drinking more alcohol or using substances.
Well,
not a good option there.
Not a good choice.
No.
But not a huge percentage there.
Not a huge percentage. Only 9% said that. So maybe after election day, if people are not feeling their best, they had a rough night. Well,
the biggest one was avoiding the news, right? That was the highest percentage.
That was the highest percentage. That's understandable. And it depends on where you get your news that you're avoiding it to.
Yeah. I mean, do we need to know what's going on in the world? I mean, that's for each person to decide for themselves, but completely avoiding the news, maybe that's not such a great thing to do. It's like burying your head in the sand. There is a world out there and things are going on in the world. But having my news channel turned on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and getting nothing but that one particular perspective, maybe that's not so healthy.
Okay. So if you're feeling that anxiety, definitely talk to somebody about it. And instead of turning to something negative, turn it into something positive.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think I admire the people that day after election day, I've seen folks that didn't go the way that they wanted.
Right.
So what am I going to do that's going to better the country, better my neighbor, better my home? Whether it's you change your perspective on things. Well, the next 4 years aren't going to go the way that I wanted.
Right. Well, that's true. Right. And it is just 4 years. I would say, one of the things that I've just have noticed from how conspiracy theories sort of increase in interest when people feel more disempowered, that it says to me that when people feel disempowered, they want to do something that makes them feel like they've got some control and some power. There are healthy ways to do that, and there are unhealthy ways to do that. And some of the things that we read on the list are healthier ways to do it. Don't watch the news all day, every day, and nothing else. That's not healthy. Get some exercise. That's healthy. Don't spend so much time on social media. Well, that's healthy. So there are healthy ways to cope with it, and there are ways that are not healthy. Drinking alcohol and turning to substances, not necessarily such a healthy way to deal with stress. So
causing harm to your neighbors, causing harm to your community, not healthy.
Not a healthy thing to do.
No. Okay. Dr. Taylor, what am I not asking you that you think folks need to know as we get closer, the countdown is on, and everybody's going to be stressed about what's going to happen,
right?
The words that are said up to the election and what happens on election day?
Well, we can't not feel the things that we feel. We have to feel our feelings, and our feelings are important. But there are some feelings that we feel that we are really terrified of. We're afraid of our anxiety. We're afraid of our anger. We're afraid of our rage. And those are feelings that time and time again, I hear patients tell me, what do I do with that? I never have a patient tell me if they're feeling joyful about something to say, I don't know what to do with this joy. They never say that. But if they're angry or frustrated or anxious, I don't know what to do with this feeling, like I have to do something with it. So I think the most important thing I would say is that we feel what we feel. We need to learn ways to cope with the feelings that we have, but they are our feelings and they're not going to destroy us. and we can learn to tolerate them and make use of them in constructive ways and not just always be looking for ways to get rid of them.
Okay. All right. So I appreciate this. This is good.
Yeah,
This
thanks.
is definitely good. All right. So the best thing that you can do is get out and vote, do something positive, and your voice does matter. As you said,
Right.
Put value in yourself and go out and vote.
That's it.
All right. I'm Myra Ansari with Dr. Taylor. Hope you have a great day.